Hi, this is Kenneth Nguyen. A few years ago, before I launched the Vietnamese podcast, my father and all of his siblings passed away. Their passing marked the loss of their stories and the connection to my grandparents and great grandparents. This is partly what inspired me to start the work of the podcast. Many of you still have the opportunity to record and preserve the legacies of your own families. I've just begun to sit with a few families now for interview sessions to record the rich histories of their parents and the lives of the generations that preceded them. Don't let your family's stories go untold. Take a moment to reach out to me, and together we will bring out your family's story on a recorded journey. I've included the link in the episode description. Visit VietnamStoryBank.com today for more information.
My name is Kayli Tran. I'm an actress, and recently I was blessed to be able to be on HBO show The Sympathizer, and now I'm here. So thank you, Ken, for having me.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over.
Thank you, Kayli. Thank you, Kayli, for coming on. I was watching The Sympathizer and you come on, and for a brief second, I didn't recognize you because of the Vietnamese that's spoken. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, is this like ADR? Is this, a recorded, you speaking Vietnamese later? But I realized, no, that's you speaking Vietnamese, right?
I mean, my biggest fear was like I was so bad that they would have to use somebody else's voice to dub over.
Yeah.
But luckily, I think everybody spoke their own Vietnamese. And I had to practice a lot because I think a lot of the scenes were me being tortured. And that's, when you're tortured, it's really hard to recall your lines.
Yeah.
So it was
But
a lot of practice.
are you born here? You're born in Vietnam.
I was born in Vietnam, but I came here when I was super little, so I have no memory.
So you didn't grow up really speaking Vietnamese?
I grew up in Nashville, and you would think that there aren't that many Vietnamese, but because we had a small community, we're very tight knit. And so my mom really forced me to learn Vietnamese, and she used to be a teacher in Vietnam. So she had some like books. She had some like educational books, and she was like, "You are gonna write a letter to your grandma today. Here are some dictionaries. Figure it out."
Wow. So it does show up then. It does show up that there is some intention behind the way you speak, and I
Yeah,
say
I hope
that,
so.
yeah. I mean, it's very clear. You said your mother's a teacher. She probably, you probably don't think about it, but like, you know, kids who grow up in America, they speak a certain type of Vietnamese that's, you could tell. And when you were speaking in The Sympathizer, I was like, oh, it sounds like a very, somebody who grew up in Vietnam and probably left a little later.
Oh, interesting. I just I mean, I have an older sister, so growing up with an older sister who knows the language a little bit more, it really helps. And then your mom being a teacher, like I think at the time I just hated being forced to learn and being like so embarrassed to read my letter out loud. It's a terrible letter to grandma. Grandma would not understand any of this, but I think it was all meant to be here on HBO on The Sympathizer. But yeah, I the dialogue, I mean, kudos to the people who had to translate um the lines into Vietnamese because I think the showrunner and writer for The Sympathizer was a Canadian guy who wrote the script in English first, and then we had to translate it to Vietnamese to make it make sense, to make the story flow. And then you also have to adapt it to the time, like in 19 whatever, 1970s to the 80s. And so it's not something I would say
Yeah.
on a normal day to day. So I really had to pick up a dictionary and figure out each word, what it actually really means and why am I saying this word.
Makes sense. What was it like growing up for you in Nashville?
It's I, I don't know how to compare it to a different place, but looking back, I really enjoyed growing up in Nashville because it's a small community. Everyone is super nice. I think we were super blessed to have all these like community programs, and I don't know if it's like government funding to help refugees and immigrant families get acclimated. And so I got to take piano lessons for like 10 years, paying 50 cents per lesson. Like, I don't know how, I mean, you don't question it, but I don't know how that came to be. My parents got to go to adult school to learn English, and they did so well that the teachers told them to take the GED. But they were like, well, what if we pass the GED? We can't take classes anymore. So they purposely like failed the GED so that they continue just going to classes and practice, speaking English. Like, just like really silly, but like really grateful things that we were lucky to have. I remember, I don't know how I found this. Maybe it was from the piano class, but there was like a flyer um for kids who want to learn dance. And I was like, I'm interested. I want to go. So I got the flyer, and it was held at Vanderbilt not hospital, Vanderbilt College, University. Um, and it turns out that the guy who was teaching it was the college student who had to put in like hours, put in volunteer hours. So this young guy teaching a bunch of kids how to dance, and I was like the only Asian person there. I was like, how did I find myself here?
Wow. And that is an amazing story. And so that's like your first foray into entertainment?
Yes, I mean, I think I was always one foot in a sense, because what growing up, because we had a small community, I think we rallied against each other. I'm not against. We rally with each other to like come together to have some kind of like connection and community. And there was this aunt and uncle. There was this gokyu who had like some money to help put together like the events and like lunar fall festival and stuff like this to like bring everyone together. And so all the little kids, like me and my sister and all my friends, got together to like sing and dance. Like, I remember singing what's that song? It's been so long. Hôm qua em đi chùa Hương. Like silly songs like that. I'm like, oh my goodness. It was a lot of fun. I can't believe I just dove right in.
I love it. I love it. I mean, these are the things that, create this sense of a home away from home in the early days.
Yeah, yeah. I think at that time, everybody, I mean, all of the adults, all of the goju and my parents just kind of figured out like, how do we make the best of this? Because w like Nashville is not a sunny and beach weather kind of place. It was like wintry, lots of snow, no leaves on the tree, like very different from Vietnam. And so people had a lot, I think had a tough time getting used to this new reality. And so I think the community really relied on each other to,
Now,
to feel something.
you know, when I think about Nashville as an American, I think of country music. I think of bright lights, and I think about cowboy boots, and I think about entertainment. It is another place that is similar to LA or New York, but focuses on country music. Did you ever sort of live in that world in Nashville?
No, I think I lived outside of that world, which isn't very far. It's like 20 minutes out, but 20 minutes out mean you're in the suburb. And so most of the time you're you're kind of just kept to, like, I just went to church. That was my recreational activity. That's where I made most of my friends, because I couldn't hang out with the school friends. You can't do, sleepovers. You can't like go to their house. You can't hang out beyond a school setting. But church friends, oh yeah, go to church, hang out, go to lunch. That's fine. So that was kind of like my little bubble growing up.
And so you were never really exposed to the entertainment world in Nashville at all?
Not to the fullest extent. Like the
Yeah.
most was piano classes, which were a lot of volunteers who were pursuing something in the music industry, whether like playing in a band or singing. Um, and or the guy who's teaching dance because he's trying to pursue that and he's putting in volunteer hours. So that's as much as I you know, had a taste of, but I don't think I was allowed to like go further than that
Yeah.
because I had to do my homework. I got to take AP classes. I got to like, I think the most like I could explore was like tennis. Couldn't do
Oh,
cheerleading, couldn't do like anything too crazy. Tennis, that's okay.
yeah, very Asian.
Very Asian, yeah, all the Asian stuff.
But so you're coming in up in high school. Did you end up going to college in Nashville or Tennessee?
No, I was like, I'm done. I gotta get out. I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go. Yeah, I did college in Atlanta for a little bit before coming out to LA because I think the trajectory was just I gotta get out to a bigger city. Like growing up in a small city was great and all, but like it was time. It was time. And I
Yeah.
knew I think in my heart I always knew I wanted to go to California for whatever reason. Now I know why, but at the time you hear about oh California, Los Angeles, and I'm like I would love to explore that place. I
What
want
do
to
you
go
think?
there one
What do
day.
you think of it now after all these years?
I think it's like a second home. I think I would live here for as long as I could if I could afford it. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of expensive and I don't know if it's getting any better. But I think my new dream is to have a house in different places.
Hmm.
And one of them would be like Vietnam, another would be here, keep the house in Tennessee, and like maybe another house in Europe or I don't know, another continent somewhere.
So you still consider Nashville your first home?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so because that's where I grew up. That's my beginning. So I guess that
Mhm.
would be my first home.
Yeah, it's for somebody like me who grew up in LA, it's really cool to meet somebody who grew up in London or Nashville, Vietnamese, you know?
Yeah.
It's so different and it's different, but yet for me, when I think about Nashville, I think very similar to LA because of like the music industry and the hub of Americana. You know, when I think of Nashville, I think of, you know, the good old days of country music, you know, back in the day when everybody would go to Nashville to record and to become somebody in the music game, in country music. Such a big part of the United States country music scene, like LA
Yeah.
is to film. And so, you know, I don't get to talk to, I mean, many people, many Vietnamese who grew up in Nashville. So it's just
Yeah.
so intriguing to me.
I wonder if it's because like if you're not deep in it, you wouldn't experience it. Just like I'm in LA now, and as much as I am pursuing this career, I don't live in Beverly Hills surrounded by celebrities, going to Erewhon, getting an expensive $50 juice. So while I'm pursuing it, I don't think I'm deep within that world to be able to say I'm a true Los Angeles or Angelino.
Angelino. But
Yeah,
I'm going to push back because I'm going to make the argument that you are living that life. You are living the life because when you get to know the people who are living in Beverly Hills or in the hills or whatever, they're just really an extension of what you're doing. But you know, they're just a little bit further along in the career. And I can attest to that because I know certain people living there who are kind of living parallel lives. They're still doing the work of auditioning, they're still doing the work. They're just a little bit further along, you know. But you're arguably you're living in the world. You go on set, you live the life that very few people in the world are actually experiencing as a result of living in LA, working as an actress.
oh, well, thanks for like clarifying what this future would look like because I always wonder like, when I get to a certain point, what would life be like? Would I be different? Will like the fame or the money change a person? Because I think there comes a fear with that. Like there's a fear of the other side of success. And so
I think it
I
changes
wonder,
everybody. I think it
yeah.
does. Yeah, I think it changes everybody. And depending on where you're standing as a person who's looking at Kayli, whether it's
Mhm.
Kayli looking at Kayli or it's somebody on the outside looking at you, depending on where they're positioned, it may seem like you've changed. But yeah, there's a power dynamic that happens, right? So your mom and dad might not think you've changed. They, oh my God, Kayli's gotten sweeter because she bought us a house. So from that dynamic, right? It's different. It's like, oh my God, she's just gotten sweeter. You know, she's always been our wonderful child, and she's gotten sweeter. And then, but to some distant friend who was in high school with you, they're like, look at her, she's all like highfalutin and now, you know. So depending on where the person is looking, the Kayli Tran, you know, persona will change. And that is, I think, what I've seen my entire life living in LA.
Oh, interesting. And then you, as the person, can't control how people perceive that. It's
No.
just your own thing.
Yeah. And you know, there's certain things that you have to change. You can't,
Mm.
you can't like, you can't help but to change it. You can't, once you get to a certain place where you're like recognized, everybody notices you, you can't travel to the movies or to the grocery store or to Erewhon the same as you did when nobody knew who you were. So those things, kind of those modified behaviors, make close friends of yours go, wow, that's weird, Kayli's acting like that. But many times they don't understand like the reason you act that way, the reason you have to hold back certain information, the way you have to carry yourself is different because every position that you encounter, every person, there's different metrics, there's different ways of that you have to be. It's very complicated in LA.
Oh man, I feel like I'm speaking to a celebrity with like many experiences and wisdom.
I'm not a celebrity. I am just somebody who grew up in Los Angeles my whole life, and I've just seen rise and fall of, you know, the different lifestyles, you know, people who made it to multiple millions and who've lost all of it and who become regular people again. I've run into a lot of those people in my life here in LA. And you know, it, so for those people, you could say arguably that they changed and then they went
Mhm.
back to being normal again and unknown. You know, like I used to work in the interior design business where there were garment makers that would, you know, we would do their homes as a window coverings person, and I would get to know them for a few years, and you could see the lavish lifestyle. And then a few years later, they'd call me and they're like, "Oh, can you come measure my apartment?" And then they would tell me about their story, about how they lost everything. And so I've made friends with many of those people, and as well as people in the entertainment business. And so it just fluctuates, and you can see how things change depending on where your positioning is in life. So
That
that's the
is so
way it goes in
interesting.
LA.
Do you think it makes life m- crazier or more fulfilling when you experience all those
I don't
ups
think
and
we can control any of that, and I think the best thing to do is just to kind of go along for the ride and just be thankful at all times and be living in gratitude that we get to even be people who get to have this experience of living in LA in the action, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I think about Nashville all the time, and I think about New York, and I think about Atlanta and all the different places that Vietnamese people are living. And it always interests me to hear the proximity of like Atlanta's entertainment industry and New York's entertainment industry, Nashville's entertainment, as it relates to Vietnamese people coming up in those locations, you know?
Yeah, I think Nashville is still a very, I mean, outside of music, I don't think it's a big place for filmmaking yet. I don't think there are any tax benefits to be filming there. So it's still mainly focused on music and country music, which every time I meet someone and I tell them I'm from Nashville, they're like, "Do you sing?" I'm like, "Oh my God, that's the worst thing. That's my worst talent."
Be,
No.
be, because there's that automatic assumption that coming out, you know, somebody who probably looks like you, who carries themselves like you, is probably moved to Nashville to pursue a life in music,
Yeah. Yeah. I
you know?
Yeah, I'm like, there aren't that many Asian people, and there's one less now that I'm here. So,
So when did you start to have this sort of inclination to become an actor?
I mean, I guess like through like Thud and through all these like community stuff that I've done, I think it was so much fun that I'm like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do this when I grow up. But I never thought that it would be an actual real adult career. until I moved to LA, and I had a marketing job, like a regular desk job, and no one was happy. Everyone was just kind of punching in, punching out, doing their thing. And every time I look at my bosses, they're just so miserable. And I kind of had a glimpse of my future, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't
Wow.
like this at all. So I started using my PTO to go to classes. I had an aha moment. I was like, if money wasn't an issue, what do I want to learn? What do I want to do? And I had always been curious about acting and the entertainment industry. And now that I'm in LA, I said, let me just take a class. Let me take one class just to feel it out, see how I feel. Maybe I'm so terrible that it was just a fleeting thought. Never again.
Wow.
And I remember my first class, I think I was like bawling my eyes out. It was so cathartic. It was so like just a relief. It was just like
Oh my God.
uplifted, and like the gates of heaven open, and one class turned into like multiple, turned into I think 2 years. And
Just classes.
yeah, and classes, well, I committed to staying in class because I was like, I didn't learn as a child, and I have a lot of catching up to do with all of these Hollywood kids. And so I committed to like 2 years of classes. Um,
I want to
and
stop you
like,
right there.
yeah,
That is very different from a lot of people's journey, which is this. A lot of people are like, I'm gonna move to LA and become an actress or an actor, and I'll just take a bunch of headshots and send them out, and I don't know how to act, and I'll just jump in. And they don't get the part. So it's rare that somebody, well, I mean, it's not rare. People who are serious about a craft like writing or acting, 2 years to commit, that is an amazing thing. And I think that that is sort of like the basis of what every one of us need to do if we are serious about a craft like acting. And I want to kind of clear it. I want to let people out in the world know that if you want to pursue anything, I think you have to like see the long trajectory of this, which is 2 years of classes ain't shit to
yeah.
do, right?
But I did do that too. I did classes at night, and I went and got headshots. And I took like all my PTO, called in sick to like do a student film. Like I was playing hooky a lot
Yeah.
with my job, and then going to classes at night for 4 hours or however long, and then signing up for other classes. So I was doing it both because I knew I had to make up time. Like well, there are so many people who hit it big as an overnight success, but then when you really look at it, they've been at it since they were like 15, 16.
10 years
And
easily.
it takes at least 10 years to just like break in. And so I was like, okay, I gotta put in my hours. I gotta do everything I can. I gotta hustle. I gotta do my
Yeah.
headshots, even if they're not the best thing ever. I have to just start. Um, and I remember, I think by 6 months of doing that, I finally was comfortable enough to quit my job. So within
Wow.
around 6 months, I was like, okay, I was super frugal, saved up enough money to just take care of myself and like any necessities. And if I should be unemployed for the next year or so pursuing this, that I would be okay. So it's like just the bare minimum of like getting by. And everything went into investing back into like classes and headshots and pictures and resumes and all that stuff. And luckily, I think around that time I was doing pretty well with commercials. So then I was able to stretch out my savings and have some income from the commercials that I've been shooting. So I don't know if it's called luck. I don't know if that's how it's meant to work, but it was it kind of just worked out, and it gave me enough validation to be like, you got to keep going. You got to go. You just do it.
Wow. And so that was it. You had just that sort of, you had some money saved up, and then that was the
Yeah.
launch that you needed.
Yeah, and I think uh, it, I don't know whose TED Talk this was, but they said you need to have a lot of grit. You need to have a lot of passion, and you really have to love doing this because it is hard to pursue something that isn't going to make you a lot of money. Anything in the creative field at first will not make you a lot of money. So you really have to
Yeah.
love the work.
Yeah. If you don't love the work and if you love the notoriety and the fame, it's not gonna, you'll never make it.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can get there a different route because this is a hard route to do that. Like you won't get famous like going through this route. This is the longest way ever, but it is the most fulfilling for me and it's so much fun and I get to explore things and doing um I get I get to explore different experiences, different feelings, different characters, different like make-believe situations that I wouldn't be able to do that in real life.
And you know, when you started to kind of book these gigs, did you notice like there were other actresses sort of in your kind of grade, sort of in your class, in the level that you're at, and then you kind of all show up at the same auditions, and you guys all kind of grow together? Do you notice that?
Yeah, yeah. If you go enough, you're going to start seeing the same people. And then if you're in it long enough, you're going to start to see who shows up all the time, who's super dedicated. And it's usually about the same 10 people.
Okay,
Um,
that's what I want to get to. Okay,
yeah.
so you notice all these people when you first start out, you start going to all these auditions and you see the same people, right? What
Yeah.
do you think separates the people who start booking jobs from the ones that don't book jobs? Do you know? Do you know enough? Are you connected to enough of these actresses or actors to kind of know what is making certain people book and certain people not book things?
Are you talking about the general people or are you just talking about the 10 core? Like the
Both.
people?
I want to know
Both.
if you have an answer for both of them. I would love to hear it. But if you only have an answer for just your 10, I want to hear
Yeah.
that.
I think I think what separates the people who book a lot versus those who don't is just dedication and commitment and practice. The people who don't book a lot usually don't show up a lot. You know, they're half in, half out. They eventually over time they will quit. And that is very like the same characteristics of, you know, they're not committed to it. So that's why you don't book a lot because you don't show up a lot. You don't practice a lot. You don't go to classes a lot. So of course you're not going to make it very far. For those who are committed and they always show up no matter what, they always practice their craft. Um, the people who do book a lot, I think this now comes down to like unique personality and each person as their own individual and what they bring to the table as their own each person is almost like a different flavor to the
Yeah,
to the to the
director.
project, yeah, and to the audition. And so like while we all audition for the same thing, there only one person can book it, but one person will not book everything for every audition that you
Hmm.
go to. And so we all like sometimes I get a little lucky, sometimes the other person will get it, sometimes another person will get it. And so I think all of us kind of like take turn booking different things. And then after enough time, you kind of figure out, oh, I tend to book certain things a lot more than the others. And so you kind of figure out like where you fall in.
And how much of this is related to memory and talent, actual talent?
I don't know. I'm kind of there questioning that as well. Like, can are you born with talent or can
Hmm.
you get
Work on
there
it.
through, yeah, through working hard, through learning and through, just practicing as much as possible on top of like being super passionate about it. Can you still get to the same place as a person who was born with it? Um, I think it's possible. I think both are true. Um, but I already know where I am. Well, I mean, was I born with talent? I don't know.
Yeah, that's
But I,
fair.
I I can confirm that I work hard and I practice and I want to make this work and I want to keep pursuing this for the rest of my life because I freaking love this and it's so much fun to me. And I think for my journey, when I started booking more in TV and film, is when I started to relax more and be more confident in my talent. You can be super, like, let's say you're born talented, but super self-conscious about it. I don't think that works either.
Oh.
So you really have to be confident in your talent, how much or how little that you have, and just relax in it.
When did you figure that out?
I think in the last few years. I think during the pandemic when everything shut down, there was nothing, like Hollywood shut down. You can't do anything. You just gotta go home and quarantine and sit in silence for I don't know how many months that was. And I think everybody were forced to self-reflect. And I think maybe that helped um, me to calm down and just kind of have another aha moment, I guess, and learning how to relax more into myself.
The pool of actors and actresses, the Vietnamese world, we are still in a place where we don't. And the reason I say that is, like, when we as marketing people or people who are looking at a person, whether it's an actor or actress that could carry the torch for a message, right? We're looking at numbers. And I say we as producers, sometimes we're looking at numbers and we're looking at people who have like the big numbers on the board, like an Ali Wong, or people who could really carry the weight of a movie. And I think we as the Vietnamese community, we're not there yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're there yet. We don't have like the big oomph where like a Netflix or a big streamer can come in and go, we'll put a lot of money on that actor because they can carry a movie.
Why do you think we're not there yet?
Because the numbers on each big movie, big actors, they're like bean counters at the studio level, right? There's actually point systems that are designed on actors and people that show up on screen. So if you put a Jim Carrey in with the Sandra Bullock, or our big Jennifer Lopez, and they could do calculations, like the bean counters, the accountant people could do calculations on like basically how much this is going to make based on being a rom-com, an action movie with these names. This actor, this actress can carry a movie based on these metrics.
And is it always right or true?
That's a great question. I don't think it's always right or true. I don't think that there is a rule, a hard and fast rule, but I do believe that there is a safety margin that happens with gambling on certain percentages of these names. So you get like a point for director's name. You get a point for, this is what I learned 20 something years ago when I was going through film school at USC. I didn't go through film school, film class at USC. Took a lot of film classes as a minor. And what I learned is, at the business side of it, there are, at the Netflix level, and I knew this before Netflix was in existence, that at the studio level, the bean counters knew each studio had an accounting system, an assignment system, that based on whoever the big name or the marquee name was, they could say, okay, if you put them in a rom-com with this actor, actress, this genre, this is how much we're going to slate to make, because here are the comps, like a real estate, like the homes in this neighborhood make this much amount of money with a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom. They could figure things like that out based on the history of movie making as the years went on, right? It's science if you think about it. So they could be like, yeah. So they could be like, okay, so George Clooney made, let's say, like 50 million in his last 3 movies. That's the average. So they would use those kind of comps, and then they would throw it into a formula, and they would figure it out. So we, as the Vietnamese community, we haven't produced the names that are on the leaderboard yet. We just haven't produced those big names yet.
How do we get there? Just continue
I
making
was
our
just
own.
going to ask you that question.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think this is a discussion.
yeah.
that I wanted to have with you. It's like, I know that, there's several actresses that are like in your class right now, and it's just a matter of time before your class starts to break out and become and shoot up in the, the big movies. But it just hasn't happened yet.
I I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I don't know, so I don't know
Yep.
how to get to that place, because it's like I keep thinking the question, you need experience to get a job. Do you need a job to get
Mhm. Yep.
experience? So how does one from our community
Yep.
get that opportunity if we don't have a long history to to prove to the bean counters that we can do it, even though we can, like,
But the question that I always have is, yeah, it's the same thing. Is it the For me, it's like there's three dynamics to the chicken and egg. It's not just can the actor do it and can they make the money, or it for me there's like it's three different things happening. It's like, okay, do you have an actor or actress that can do it, right? So do they have the talent, they have the look, do they have the charisma, all of that? Do they have it? And then the other part is the studio system willing to take a bet and the risk on that person to like elevate? Is the trajectory in the making to bring that name up? And then the third thing is, what about the audience? What if there's not an audience that's into, if it's a predominantly white world or little sprinkle of, black, and black is like always charismatic. It's always like fun to watch black entertainers, right?
yeah.
So if it's predominantly white people or, these wonderful black shows, is America going to tune into the Asian faces? What does it take to tune into a Vietnamese face?
I mm, this is just I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
I don't know if it adds to the answer or anything, but I think it however we add to it, it has to universally connect to people of all
Everywhere.
backgrounds.
That's right. Like Korean.
Yeah. And I think it was Adele Lim who might have said this somewhere in an article. I could be sourcing this all wrong, but I think somebody had mentioned that, like, um she writes she writes to highlight things that are like universal challenges or universal experiences that everybody can connect to. And then you can color in the ethnicity or individuality of that character, if that makes any sense. I read somewhere, and it might be Adele Lim, the writer of one of the writers of Crazy Rich Asian, who now is directing a
Yeah.
bunch of other. I think it might have been her, but I think she said she writes to hopefully transcend color. And then the cherry on top is their their color. But the whole story itself should transcend that. And then you just sprinkle some magic with, their background, their ethnicity, but it shouldn't be at the forefront. The forefront is the story that universally connects everyone together.
I agree with that. But sometimes you feel like blackness is at the forefront of a lot of shows, It feels like blackness and how cool black people are at the front of, some of these front facing mediums like rap music, or and I'm only saying that because it's like they've made it cool. K-pop
Mhm.
has made it cool to go
Yeah.
beyond just being black or just beyond Koreans. They've
Yeah.
transcended outside. And I don't know how universal their music is, especially if you're not understanding Korean, how universal is that music? So what is it about these other cultures that have made it cool and popped off the charts for them that we as Vietnamese can hope to do? Is it the boldness? Is it the sort of the ingenuity, the creativity that they bring that with this explosive energy to the mediums that they're a part of?
I think maybe like the I think deep down there's a science to it that we are not privy to.
Hmm.
What as the Vietnamese community, what is so unique to us that we can be the cool kids, that we can be global and have people want to be us? What do we have?
But I'm biased. I just think Vietnamese people are the most beautiful people on earth. So I think we bring a lot of that exterior beauty, but that exterior beauty is not going to carry us into the hearts and minds of audience people who are consuming content or film, right? You know, that's not enough. And I say that, you know, tongue in cheek, and I'm being facetious about it. But I do believe we are a very beautiful group of people. But at the same time, there has to be more. And I don't know what that is, but if we could connect the way Adele Lim is talking, which is universal first, that's the most important thing, is to have a universality about the content and the things that we produce. And then you can color it with specifics, with colors. Yeah. Then yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense to me. But I don't know. I hope that you are the one, or Chantal is the one, or you know, name other actresses in your world. Diane Dwan is another one. The three of you are definitely leading the pack. I don't know off the top of my head, and I apologize to all the Vietnamese actresses, but there we go, right? It's like waiting for the three of you to pop off to become like these big bean counting, you know, metrics, numbers that we could all say, well, look, you know, Kayli's carried a movie. Here's the movie she carried. You know, Scott Lee, can he carry a movie? You know, so these are conversations that I want to, you know, have in the future, in the next 5 years, that we could say, yeah, these people who have been on the Vietnamese podcast have, you know, they're putting their marks in the world now. Now we're seeing, you know, they're putting up numbers that we can, in the LA entertainment industry, go, look, that's they're putting up big numbers.
Maybe all three of us should be in a movie where we play sisters or something. That would be very fun. So I have this idea. I don't know if it'll ever happen. But I really do wish it is very possible. I think I watched The Women King with Viola Davis on
Yeah.
an air, and I was like, wait, our history is full of that. Like, I keep thinking of the story of Hai Ba Jung. I mean, I'm not well versed in it, but like, can we can you imagine making that into this fantastical film with like the sisters going to war? We got elephants, we got everything that the movie The Woman King has, on top of like Game of Thrones. I mean, if Game of Thrones is possible, any Asian story is
Yeah.
possible.
And you know, Hai Ba Trung is a fantasy of many Vietnamese film producers and directors in Vietnam. Many outfits want to do that because they know all the elements that you just described makes for a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It would be great, but you know, the
What's
budget,
stopping them? Oh, this is the budget.
the budget doesn't correlate yet. The budget of so it's all economies of scale, right? It's all like, well, what can the box office hold? What can it contain? What kind of fantasy can a producer say, all right, look, I'm going to put $2 million in this movie and hopefully it'll make 8 million at the box office, or 10 million, or 15 million. And those numbers don't happen too often. And, you know, in the past, when film producers do put that kind of money down, most films lose money. So who wants to go into I mean, what startup business in the world requires $2 million? I mean, like a small mom and pop. Think about it. We don't even require 200, 300,000 to start a business that could $2 million to make just one movie. How risky is that, right? So when you think of a big movie like Hai Ba Jung, it will require a big budget. And then it's like, okay, well, will Vietnam come out to the theaters to watch it? You know, it's such a huge risk when you think of a movie like that.
I think they totally would. Why wouldn't they?
Don't know. I mean, yeah, you'd be surprised because you'd be surprised because in the history of movie making in Vietnam, it hasn't, the big movies that make it in Vietnam are rom-coms. And recently, there is a film director named Trấn Thành. I don't know if you know Trấn Thành, but he's made 3 films. He's made the first one is Bố Già, second one is Nhà Bà Nữ, the third one is called Mai. Those 3 have beat every box office movie. It carried the box office of the year of Vietnam's box office. It rescued theaters and it rescued the industry every time Trấn Thành, the director, came out with a movie. And he stars in them too. He writes and he stars in them. And I'll run some numbers. Like an average real big movie in the past before his movies came out, 12 million was like the highest like a movie made. $12 million was box office. And a movie that makes 12 million in the US is like a bomb, right? A major bomb. Like, right. You make 12 million, you're like, but in Vietnam, you make 12 million off of a $1 million budget. You made money. It's a good. This guy comes out with his first movie called Bố Già. I think it made 18 million at the box office, which blew through the box. Movies now in Vietnam rarely will even hit 12 million. If you hit 5 million, you're considered a success, because if a movie takes $1 million or $2 to make, you double that and you have some extra 100,000, few 100,000. That's a success. But Trấn Thành will make a movie for $1 million, $1.5 million. Bring in his first movie did 18 million. Second movie did 22 million. The last movie did like 27 million. Broke all box office numbers for the Vietnamese community in America. Those 3 films that he did. And they're all family value movies. They're like a little bit of comedy, a little bit of drama, but everybody can relate. All sections of our, mom, dad, kids, we all cry. We all have a good time. We all have a good laugh. And, he's made a killing at the box office. He's the king of the box office. So
what made his movies be different than the other people that have
that's what, Kayli, that's what you should be studying. That's what you should be studying. Yeah, you should be studying that, because then you could understand what those numbers, and this is another conversation I wanted to get into with you. It's like, have you ever thought about acting in Vietnam? Because your Vietnamese is really good,
I would love to. Of course, I would love to. After the Sympathizer, a bunch of us got to go to Vietnam, and so we're riding that high off of filming, this major accomplishment in like for Vietnam and Vietnamese American, actually all Vietnamese all over the world coming together to make this show. We went to Vietnam just to like decompress and just hang out for a little bit. And I think we're all thinking like, man, we would love to represent Vietnam as well, like do movies in Vietnam to help progress the industry there, because there's so much talent there as well. But how do we do that? Like, we're all just actors. Like, how do we level up to become filmmakers?
You study it like you studied acting. That's how. You have to study it. You have to study script writing. You have to study producing. You have to study the numbers. You have to know all of it, because I think you have a run as an actor. You have a time period where you're hot, right? Where man or woman, you have a window. Sometimes your window goes on forever. Sometimes it's, stagnant after 10 years, whatever that number is. But if you can understand the business side of it, the creative side, the actual exploration of making movies, then you can put on a different hat and make a different impact in the business. And it'll allow you to go back to Vietnam. Case in point, there is an actress that grew up here in America, San Jose. She did a few acting jobs here, and then she went back to Vietnam and became an actress in Vietnam and starred in a few big movies. And then all of a sudden, she's called to become a coach, an acting coach. And that's her. She's like the biggest acting coach in Vietnam right now. She's a little bit younger than I am, and that's her. And she still writes, directs, and acts in movies. But her main thing that people come to her is and this is Kathy Nguyen in Vietnam, and she's the premier acting coach of Vietnam right now. And she's make all the big names that want to become or are acting in big movies go to see her for coaching for a few weeks before they go and act. So that's probably somebody you need to reach out to, is Kathy Nguyen, and say, hey, I'd like to come visit your studio for 2 weeks and take some acting classes with you, and go through that sort of like that exercise, get to know Kathy. And then as you're getting to know her, because she's an American, Vietnamese American, you know, and as you get to know her, you could begin to understand what the process is and what kind of material is being shot in Vietnam, and watch more Vietnamese films, get acquainted with the film directors and know who because you could break in very easily, because if you could speak Vietnamese the way you did on the Sympathizer, I mean, I'm sure there's ways to get into the Vietnamese film world.
That is so interesting. I it's such a world that I can see it, but I don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
That would be so cool. That would be so cool. I
Yeah.
just want to like
And
live here for a little bit, live there for a little bit, and then just travel worldwide to film.
yeah, and you know how crazy it is that you say that, because there's a lot of Vietnamese big actresses in Vietnam who are making, you know, big movies that would switch in a heartbeat to be where you are to make movies in Hollywood. That's the craziest thing. But I don't think that there is anybody who's doing both Hollywood and Vietnam a lot. I think there's a handful of people that maybe are in that both worlds, but there's not a whole lot of them.
Mm, yeah. Every time there's a huge movie and they need an Asian person to represent that category, they always go to Fan Bingbing.
Hmm.
I think that's her name, to represent the Chinese market to get numbers.
Yeah.
I'm like, how come it's always just her, or like someone from either China or Korea? I'm like, how do we get there that they would also consider our country, you know?
I really think the answer is, and Kayli, I think the answer is the way you approached acting for 2 years.
Mm,
In order for us to put numbers on the board, we as a community all have to get serious about not just wearing our podcast hat, not just wearing our acting hat, but getting involved in other areas of understanding how to boost each other's numbers up. And I'm not saying for you to worry about podcasting numbers. I'm saying for you to worry about, okay, I'm acting in the United States. I'm having a career here, but how do I boost my numbers in Vietnam? How do I do it here? And focus on that just the way you'd focus on the craft of acting, because that's the way that a lot of the big names have to do it too. They have to understand that there's a game beyond just the craft.
yeah. Give me 2 years.
And you know what? I have a strange feeling you will accomplish it in 2 years.
Oh, okay. I was just kidding, but okay, you said it.
No,
I gotta
no.
do
I
it
have a
now.
strange feeling. I could see the way you focus and how serious you buckle down, and you use the word frugal, and you understand that, you know, this is a serious thing to do. And you get here in Diane when she speaks about, you know, her craft, and Chantal is the same way. You know, all these actresses are thinking the same way. It's the only way to make it.
I think it's also like we can't just be actors in America. We have to be more than that. And I think, like, I always think, like, even Margot Robbie had to start her own production company.
Yep.
I mean, this is Margot Robbie. She would be fine just being an actor, but you know, she went and started her own company. Now she has more agency in like the projects that she
That's right.
works on. She has more control in which characters she wants to pursue next. She can she now has like such a wide variety of different types of characters and projects. She has comedy, drama, all kinds of stuff.
That's right. I mean, it's when you get to a certain level, you have to have a production company because it's a tax write-off and there's control agency. Yeah, there's so at a certain point, you need to have a production company because checks will be written out to you and you have to write it against, you know, expenses and stuff like that. So it's a tax thing as well as a control and agency thing for you. So you will be doing that in 2 years. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, and then Reese Witherspoon
Yep.
had her own production company on top of a book club company. I don't think it's just a regular book
Right.
club. I think there's more to it because now she's buying rights to
Yep.
books and then figuring out whether she's in it or not. She's producing so many projects that I had no idea it was her company.
Yep.
So these are some smart women. Like,
They are.
what can I do? What can I learn
Jessica
from?
Alba, same thing with her companies, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of these women, Jodie Foster. I mean, you go through the successful names in Hollywood, and you realize like the J-Los of the world and all of these people, they all have an understanding of the business. So it's just not like the craft of what you do, but now it's you really got to understand the mechanics of the business. And I think that the successful ones are successful because of this extra knowledge of how the business works. So you have to be a talented actress, but then you also have to be understanding the business side of it very well. And, you know, to be honest with you, I would take a very simple class like I took a distribution and finance for film class at UCLA Extension, right? And this was like in the early days in 2010 for me. I took a class and it opened up doors in that world for me. So once you begin to understand the business side of, oh, that's how films get financed and that's how they get distributed. And here's what the breakdown of the cost is for actors. And here's how this all works out. Once you begin to understand the legalese behind the structure of these deals, then you can begin to understand why you get roles, why you don't get roles, how you can push your name in other weird sort of ecosystems beyond just the films that you're in, how you can broker deals, and how you can live outside the life of just being an actress. And now you have control over like projects that you want to option, stories and books that you want. Like, oh my God, Chantal for Rue, I think she and the book writer Chantal got involved with the production of that story that she was, you know, in. So these are things that if you begin to understand, you begin to see that it's not just the craft of acting for you, but approach the business side in the same passion and energy that you put into learning acting.
I'm gonna have to re-listen to this podcast myself because you said so much good stuff and I'm trying to like write it down, but okay, I'm gonna have to listen for myself.
Well,
It,
and I ask these questions to people like you because I want to know how do we get more names like in the accounting mind of a studio, you know, how do we get bigger numbers, you know, accounts with Instagram followers of 8 million, 10 million people, you know, how do we do that? How do we achieve that, you know? And those
yeah,
are things that matter to studios. They'll look at IG accounts, they'll look at social media accounts. They're like, oh, that influencer has 7 million. Case in point, Stephen Ho, he was a comedian on, you know, online. He was an Instagram, a TikTok guy, right? And he was doing a great job and he was in it for like 10 years and he started to make these videos as an EMT guy and he'd make all these
uh-huh.
comedies, right? As a nurse or a
Yeah,
EMT guy.
yeah.
And he'd make all these funny skits about, you know, people almost dying and stuff like that and he's in the emergency room and the kind of crazy antics that families bring to the emergency room and all this stuff. So he started to build that up and he took acting classes like a decade before and he wanted to be an actor and he wanted to pursue all this, but he was like, okay, the most natural thing during COVID or whatever was to make these videos, built up this massive following. And then he was like, oh, I like this comedy stuff. I'm going to start to get on stage. And I watched him get on stage. And now he tours the country, sold out shows because of his massive Instagram, TikTok following. And he doesn't even have to like persuade promoters or even future producers when they're like, Stephen Ho brings numbers to the table. He will be our next Ali Wong, but the Vietnamese man. And he did it because you could tell he understands the business side of how marketing and how numbers and money and eyeballs work. And now I think Stephen Ho in a few years will probably be doing movies because if he builds up this
viewership over the years, over and over, and he builds up a strong lineup of his strong showing up for comedy. I think that that's going to be our next Kevin Hart for the Vietnamese community.
That's amazing. I remember seeing a couple of his stuff. I didn't know where he went, but now I know he's doing real life
Real life
in-person
stuff.
comedy
Yeah.
shows.
And I'm
That is
sure
so cool.
making movies and being in movies is going to be something that will happen for Stephen Ho. And Linda Dong is the same way. Linda Dong is another comedian who is huge on TikTok and Instagram. And if she wants to cross over into making movies, the studios will roll out the carpet because, you know, they got the numbers on the board to do it. And then from there, they build up, you know, just even bigger profiles.
So you're saying social media does matter?
It does matter a lot, unfortunately. It does
Yeah.
matter. It does matter a lot. But I think what we talked about earlier for you is taking lessons and being serious about, like Stephen Ho is very serious about acting classes. And today he's able to use his acting abilities to become who he's become. And I think for you, that investment in the years of taking classes is almost everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You said distribution classes at UCLA. Was it UCLA?
Yeah. UCLA Extension, finance and distribution.
Yeah.
But there's the business of film too. You know, there's
Yeah.
all these intro classes to film, filmmaking. And I think dipping your toes into these classes is it'll make you fall more in love with the actual making of movies too. Because who's to say that you come across a script of somebody that you really like, a friend of yours, and you got the power now to get money, you have the understanding of how the business works, and you become a producer and you act in your own movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm slowly there now because now I have a little bit of fun money and I want to like put it into something, whether it's investing in a movie or learning more about the back end of filmmaking, whatever it is, like what else can I do with this opportunity?
Classes first, I believe that.
Okay.
Classes first. Extension, UCLA, that's the way to go. Yeah, I've taken multiple ones to understand the business of it, and you know, there's real life professionals in class with you, and then the instructors are real life professionals working in studios too.
Yeah.
Highly credentialed instructors that are teaching and working in the business at UCLA that can totally illuminate the way for you.
Oh man,
I've never had this kind of discussion
homework
on
to
the
do.
podcast. Again?
I said I got a long list of homework to do.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. Have you spent a lot of time in Vietnam other than the last trip?
No,
That
not
was
much.
that your first time in?
No, last trip wasn't the first time, but it's like once every like 7 years,
Yeah.
you know, and it only go for a little bit. So
What did you think?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I mean, if I could live there or be like, if it's not bi-coastal, it's bi-country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to live there for some time, make a movie there for some time. I think that would be such an amazing experience.
What kind of movies are you drawn into?
Um, it's really weird. In real life, people are like, "Oh, you're so funny, you're so quirky, you're so weird, you're so awkward." But I tend to book more drama.
Hmm.
I do a lot of drama, a lot of horror movies. And it might be just because this is the phase that I'm in, the category that I
Yeah.
fall into, and the opportunities that are available to me. So I just do a lot of drama, a lot of horror movie. I've run away from killer robots, vampires, zombies.
But
I don't know
those are
why.
fun too, right?
They're so much fun, but
Yeah.
I'm like, am I a scream queen?
Well, I mean, you kind of were in the Sympathizer, but
Yeah, there you go. Another torture one. Yeah. I'm like, wow. That's
so
the phase I'm in right now.
how did you land that role in the Sympathizer?
For the sympathizer, you know, this is also a big lesson that I learned on the job, how long it takes to produce a TV show. It and to my knowledge, it took maybe 4 years or 3 years when I started entering into the process.
Wow.
And then when I talked to the people, like the producers, the executive producers, the writers, it has been like 10 years for them to create this, from Vic Thanh Nguyen writing the book to getting the book, the rights to the book being bought by
Yeah.
um, Kim Lee, and then him shopping it around to getting it produced, and then finding all the actors in Vietnam, because initially they were trying to make this
Yeah.
a Vietnamese show. And I think maybe after a year or two, the government backed out, and then all the actors backed out. And so now they're back to square one, doing an international casting. And that's when I came in, I think at the end of 2021. Pachinko had just come out, and that's also based off of a book. And it was well done, amazing, love the book. And I so want to be on that show, but I'm like, I'm not Korean, but can they write something for me?
Mhm.
Like, such an amazing accomplishment for that type of Asian storytelling. And then a few weeks later, there were news of um, the Sympathizer being made into a TV show, and I bet everybody bought that book because I bought it. I started reading it, and then shortly by January, we had the announcement of an international worldwide casting, and my team got me the audition, and I basically auditioned for every female role.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was like a 6 7 month process of like trying out this role, trying out this role, trying out this role, but there's no feedback. They didn't say if you were good or if you were moving on, or like they're nothing. You'd send in your self tape, and then that was it. And then a few months later, they'll say, hey, can you try this character and this character? And then you send it in and no feedback. And then by summertime, you're just exhausted.
Yeah.
What are they looking for? Like, give me something,
Hmm.
say something, like this is a one-way relationship. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on. And I think towards that time, that's when I auditioned for the Communist Spy. And by the fall time, September or October, we had a callback in person, which is for the last 3 years since the pandemic, we've never had anything in person. And so now, not only that it's a callback, but it's in person with everybody. I was so nervous. I was like,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
don't remember how this work. What is the process
Yeah.
again? Like, what do you do? How do you prepare for an in person? How do you practice? And then that day came. I show up to, which lot was it? I forgot which studio lot we were at. Um, but I show up, and there were other female Vietnamese actresses. And while we were all excited to see each other, the first thought was like, oh my God, are we all going for the same role?
Yeah.
You know, like, um, are you here for the Sympathizer as well? You know, and we quickly figured out we were all going for different roles, and we're like, oh my God, okay, we can be
Relief.
friends.
Yeah.
We can be friends. We can talk. We can hang. Yeah, it's a crazy ride. I remember going into the room, and there was like at least 10 to 12 people all wearing masks, and and I couldn't recognize anyone except for Tom. Tom Nguyen ended up being one of the readers with me because he was going to read some of the Vietnamese lines as well. They and I think everybody went through this experience. They would give you the Vietnamese dialogue and the English dialogue, regardless of what you say in the show, because they want to hear both.
Mm.
Which I was like, oh, why? Why does it matter? Acting is acting. It doesn't matter the dialogue. You can see the acting, you can feel the acting. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah. So it was like every character that I had to audition for was like 20 pages of English and Vietnamese. So by October, I was like, I'm tired,
Hard. Yeah.
really tired.
But now that it's done, and there was a Korean director who doesn't speak Vietnamese or English on set, do you look back and you go, oh, now I understand why they did it in English and Vietnamese, or it wasn't necessary?
It was because every person wanted something different. So in the audition and on set, director Park never looks at you to hear what you're saying. He actually looks down so that he can hear if he believes what I'm saying. Because his job is not to correct what I'm saying. We would have a Vietnamese dialogue coach to correct what I'm saying. But he's so good, he could hear it and he'd be like, I think you missed a word to certain actors. Like, it sounds like you missed a word.
Oh,
You're like, how the heck does this guy know Vietnamese?
no.
Like, he's that good. And then you have other people like the showrunner. Sometimes, like during the audition, I think he wanted to hear the English just to
Yeah.
see if his dialogue works, if it flows. So I think everybody had their own reason to why they wanted what they wanted. And we're the last to know if we do know at all.
How has the Sympathizer changed your life since it's been out?
I I don't think it has changed. I don't think it has changed like you would think winning the lottery.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a gradual change. And if I were to look back a year from now, then I could see a bigger picture of what that change is. I think we're still in the middle of the change. Um, I think history is still being written. I mean, like, I never would have thought we would get to go to the Emmy, and like, we have a couple of nominations for the show, which is amazing, you know?
Wow, I didn't know that. I should have known that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wish more of us
Yeah.
got nominated, but we do have a couple of nominations, which is, to be proud of too. So
What's
the
been
fact that,
nominated? What categories for the Sympathizer?
well, for sure, Robert Downey Jr. is nominated. So that goes back to learning the business of filmmaking and how he made that possible for himself. I think I'm not sure on the back end of like, because there's nominations for like hair, makeup,
Mm.
set dressing, all of that stuff. So I don't know if I have the full list of if we are on that list, but on the lead actor, lead actresses side, RDJ is definitely nominated. Um, and I can't remember who else is on that list, but the fact that we made it that far with
Yeah.
this story, it's still something to be proud of. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. My last question to you is, what does it mean to be Vietnamese to you these days?
I think my honest answer, what it means to be Vietnamese, is to be authentically myself, and all that it encompasses, whether it is just being Vietnamese or Vietnamese American, or if it's beyond my ethnicity. I I think like leaning more into just me, like relaxing into me and not being what I think other people project me to be, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah. And if by me being me means Vietnamese, then I'm being Vietnamese.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if by me speaking terrible Vietnamese, I'm still Vietnamese. If I
Absolutely.
eventually get better at it, I'm Vietnamese, you know? And I think it's equal parts to being an American too. Like, I think if you just be you, it's who you are. And it doesn't take away from anything, how people perceive of you. It's how you define you as yourself. I don't know, it's very
No,
heady.
I think I
It's hard to,
understand it. Yeah, I think I
yeah.
understand it. I think that the new generation, second generation Vietnamese people in the diaspora are saying, are echoing what your sentiments are, is no matter how we are represented, how we think we're being represented, we are still Vietnamese, no matter how this shows up, whether it's
Yes,
Vietnamese language skills or,
yes,
however we're showing up, we are still Vietnamese.
Better put, yes.
That's exactly what you said. I feel that's what you're like, I'm giving myself the license to be whatever and whoever I want to be. And that's how I define my Vietnameseness. I am
Yeah.
Vietnamese. Yeah.
Yeah. When I got a chance to work with all these international Vietnamese actors together on this project, I mean, we got people from Canada, Australia, there's a few people from other like countries, and yet we're all working together on something that is like of our origins. Some people connect to it more than others.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're all Vietnamese, no matter what shade it is, no matter how we show up and it makes us Vietnamese.
Kayli, thank you so much. I've had a wonderful conversation with you today about your work, and I'm excited to have you come back on one day to talk about the future of where you land.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, and thank you for manifesting my future. We're gonna make it come true.
Wonderful. And then you'll come back and tell me all about having it come true.
Yes, I'll tell you all about my journey.
Thank you, Kayli.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. Special thanks to Brittany Tran, to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast.